My name is Catherine McNulty and welcome to Grief Inspired. I am so glad that you're here. I'm so glad that you've found my channel. Please stick around. I want to thank everybody who has already been here, who has liked, commented, and subscribed to my channel, because the comments, they really warm my heart. It gives me an opportunity to help a little further, to know what's going on with you. And to continue to build content that's good and useful, and that's going to help you. And the reason why I put this channel together was because when I was grieving more than 10 years ago, there was nothing on the internet to support me. And everything that I did find was really, really clinical, was like, these are the 5 stages of grief. Told me how I should feel or how maybe I'm gonna feel, but there wasn't anyone to actually talk to me. And so what I do is I talk to you directly. If you are the one who is going through the grief process right now, and I put these together with you in mind, to support you, to help you move through your grief, and to just know that you're not alone in it. So we talk about all kinds of topics that are relevant to grief, what you might be experiencing. And today, very excited, we are talking about the wrong things that people say. And so again, this is all about you. This is not to make anyone else feel better. This is for you, the griever, to take a moment and to throw your hands up in the air and say, oh my gosh, these people, I can't believe they say these things. And then we're going to talk about why they say the things that they do. And then I'm going to give you some advice on, like, how do you deal with this? Particularly when you're going through a really challenging time, right? You've lost someone, you're grieving, and the emotions are all over the place, and you're likely depressed or angry, or it's very, very sad. And to have people say the wrong things to you in this feeble attempt to help you, that can really layer on and make grief, a little bit harder. So I want to pay tribute to that, and I want to talk about that today. So as we're talking, I'm going to drop in, I'm going to share with you some of the things that I consider to be the top things that people say, that are just so wrong. But I'm sure that you have them. And so I want to encourage you to drop yours in the comments too, because I can guarantee that there will be other people who have heard similar or the same types of comments. And I think it's good for us all to relate, because sometimes we believe that, no one could possibly understand the pain that we're going through, and that what's happening to us has not happened to anyone else in the world, and that we are the only one who is suffering. And the suffering and the pain is so deep and so hard, that we really just feel overwhelmed. And that's how it feels. And that's a normal part of grief. But I will tell you that there are other people who understand the pain of grief, and they are likely all of the people here who are watching these videos along with you. And so this is an opportunity for us to support each other. So drop those comments in as you think about them. Now, I want to share something that I've talked about in some other videos, because I am going through yet another loss in my life. The good thing is that obviously, as the grief lady, quote, the grief lady, I have the tools and I know how to go through it. And, and as you heal from grief, the pain there will be some pain still there. You will remember, it hits your heart. Like your memory of the pain that you experienced, doesn't ever go away. And with each additional loss, however that is, they can compound if you don't heal. But it really, it brings back the emotions. It brings back, you have memories and you have thoughts of when you've grieved throughout your life, whoever or whenever it was that you were grieving. And so I shared in a couple of videos before that I wanted another baby, and I am going to be 50, June of 2021. And there was a chance, and I went after it hard to go through the IVF process again, because I knew the process. I was in a position to do it financially. And so I did it and I gave it a go. And during the process, they collected 10 eggs that they fertilized. And then we waited a week to see how the eggs were maturing after they were fertilized with sperm. And so I had 10 eggs, like I said, 8 were successfully fertilized. It dropped down then to 4 that were okay after a couple of days, and then we were down to 2. And those 2 made it 5 days to what's called the blastocyst stage, which is just a bunch of cells. I had to wait about 2 weeks to see whether or not they were going to be okay. So what they do is they take a cell out of the blastocyst and they send it for next-gen sequencing. They do a chromosomal analysis on it to see whether or not it's a viable embryo. And unfortunately, the 2 that I had, they found that they were not viable, that there were genetic problems with them. I do know that one of the embryos was a little boy, one of the embryos was a little girl, and I really wanted that to happen. And when you have expectations through pregnancy and you're expecting it to happen and it doesn't, it is loss all day long. So I want you to know that I'm going through some loss myself. Obviously, I have the tools. The pain is there. You can see I'm still teary-eyed, of course, because it was really important. And I had an expectation, and it was something I really wanted, that now the future that I wanted and expected is not there. And when that happens, we experience grief. So I want you to know that I'm in this with you now, again, even more. And I think, if you think of an upside to any of this, it gives me more insight now, again, into what it is that you're experiencing. And I totally get how hard this is, because life keeps going and our lives keep going, and we still have to do all the things that we need to do while we're grieving the loss of the people that we love. So, okay, so given that, there are some people, even to this day, as who I am, who will say things that are just the wrong things to say. Now I kind of chuckle but it still stings. It still stings, and I still get that when somebody says something that's completely wrong, I get this I want to just kind of lash out and get angry and start screaming at them and say, like, don't you get it? But we're going to talk about that. But I also, on the other side, on the flip side of things, I have people in my life who, because I've done the work, because I've healed, because I've, educated myself in this space, I have some amazing people in my life who have a very high emotional IQ, who are very supportive, who know what to do, who know what to say. And I feel blessed about that. But again, going back to the people who say the wrong things, I want to preface it by saying, and not that I'm letting these people off the hook, because honestly, I think people need to do better. But when people say things, I think that it is important to note that they are well-intentioned, but clueless. And that's the only way I can sort of wrap my head around it and say, like, how can you, you walk away and you say, how can you even say that, right? Like seriously, I remember thinking that in my head multiple times when people would say things to me. I would just go off in my head, like, seriously? So we're going to talk about some of those today. I've written a couple of them down to talk about. And again, I want to encourage you to share yours down below. And the takeaway here is that, when we're talking about all of these things, what we need more than anything is empathy from others. We don't need people's sympathy. So many people shove their grief down because I don't want people to feel sorry for me, right? And no, I'm grieving. I don't need you to feel sorry for me. What I need you to do is have a little bit of empathy. And I always go back when it comes to empathy and compassion. I always go back to Brene Brown's work because I love her. And she is amazing in the way she explains all of this. And she talks about 4 components of empathy. These are the things that people would actually need in order to truly be empathetic. And one is being able to understand your perspective, being able to say, this hasn't happened to me, but I can put myself in your shoes and try to understand what you're feeling. The second component is lack of judgment. We don't need people to judge us right about now. 3 is recognizing the emotion in someone else, right? Taking a hot second before you open your mouth and understanding and trying to get a sense for what might you be feeling. This is what other people, and then have the courage, right? Because being empathetic is really about courage to not try to fix, but just feel with somebody else what they're going through. So those are the components of empathy. Those are the things that oftentimes people need to learn. They don't have. But the takeaway is that people who do respond to you with true empathy, you will find that it makes you feel better when somebody says the wrong thing. And you do you know the term bristle, right? Where you bristle, where you have this like visceral response where you tense up in your body. And you think to yourself, just don't say anything, right? It's that time when they say something and you literally want to turn around and walk away, and just not be in the position that you're in. Okay, so here they are. So I have to start with this one because I think it's the number one. And Brene Brown talks about this, is that anything that someone says following an at least is not empathetic. At least she lived for a long time. At least you were able to have a baby. At least you have another son or daughter. At least he or she is in a better place. Any chance anybody said any of these things to you? When someone says at least to you, shut out the rest of it, because you know that whatever is coming is not going to be helpful. It's not empathetic. It's not helping you in any way. So just remember that at least, no. Have you had someone call you up and say, well, how are you doing? Right? Like, what is your response to that? So many people tell me, people just keep asking me how I'm doing. How are you doing? How are you doing? How are you doing? And no, because when they say that, like, how do you think that I'm doing? Right? This is the thought that goes off in my head is, how do you think that I'm doing? I am deep in grief. I've just lost someone I love. I feel like shit. I am angry. I am super sad. I have never felt this sad in my entire life. I'm so depressed. I'm not really sure how I'm going to get out of this. Something as simple as how are you doing can really set me off. And I know that with some of the clients I've talked with, they can too. So let me know how many times you've heard that. And along the lines of like, how are you doing? People will say, well, I know how you feel. And I went through the same thing. And then they'll try to like dump on you their story, to let you know that they've been through pain too, which for you as the one who's actually still in pain, I really don't want to hear about anybody else's pain right now. I am so absorbed in my own shit over here, that hearing about your pain is not helpful. And it's kind of like when they start talking like that, again, it's one of those times when like I literally wanted to like just stop them from talking and turn around and say, I gotta go. And you just turn around and walk away. I wish I had more power to do that when it was going on, back in the days. Today, I can actually say that. But I've had a lot of practice. But again, we'll talk about why they're doing this later, but I want to just take a few moments and say, like, you have every right to be angry when this happens. You have every right to have all of the thoughts, whatever the thoughts are that are going off in your head. Like, for me, it was really, like someone that I love just died, and you're sharing your death story with me. Like, you're dumping your stuff on me too. Thank you very much. It's just crazy. Another one, and this seriously just happened to me, and it's hard when it's the people that you really love, and it's, and for me, it was a dear friend, and she said, what you have is enough. Like, you and your son are enough for each other. And again, my immediate thought was, how can you say that? That's so hurtful. And yes, like the fact that I am grieving another child that I wanted does not mean that I am not grateful for what I have. And you saying that what you have is enough, in my mind, implies that that's what you mean. Like, that's what goes off in my head. Be grateful that you have other children. Well, what you have is enough. Ugh. Again, people just clueless. They do not get it. Okay, there's some big ones now. So everyone's heard these. God has a plan. And I'm thinking to myself, you telling me that God has a plan, not helpful right about now. Maybe 6 months, maybe a year from now, I'll try to, I encourage people to look back and say, okay, what are we supposed to learn from this? Like, how have you grown through the grief experience, right? I'm all about that. But telling somebody that God has a plan as a reason for why your loved one died, not helpful. Totally not helpful. And, all I can say for you is, if people have said that to you, is like, I'm really sorry that they are so stupid. I really am. And in conjunction with that, well, God has another angel in heaven. God needed an angel, and they're at peace in heaven. And again, yes, those things can be beautiful, whatever. It's nice to imagine your loved one in the arms of God in heaven, if you believe in God or whatever, or wherever they might go. But the reality is like, I want my loved one here with me now. I am the one who's sad because they're not here. I'm the one who's missing them, right? And so, hearing those things, not helpful at all. And again, the tried and true, the tested, when you absolutely don't know anything else to say, time heals all wounds. Just wait and you'll feel better. Question for you. Do you absolutely believe that? If you ask me, that whole time heals all wounds is total bullshit. Because time won't heal all wounds. It's the work that you do to process what has happened will heal all wounds. And the more work that you do, the faster you will heal. Yes, does grief and processing grief take time? Absolutely. But do not for a second believe that if you just sit back, stuff down your feelings, and wait for time to go by, that your grief is going to get better. Because the reality is the reverse will happen. It will actually get worse. It'll fester like a wound, and it will show up in ways that that aren't going to be good for you. So every time somebody tells me time heals all wounds, I call it bullshit. Just call it out. Like, go ahead. Just tell people bullshit. Or when somebody tells you God has a plan, not helpful, right? Just throw it out there. Feel free. I had a therapist once who told me, she gave me permission, which was so great. Because sometimes we feel like we can't say the things that we want to feel. When we feel really angry, we feel like we can't take it out on other people. We shouldn't do that. And okay, maybe we shouldn't. But in the time when you're grieving and the time when things are really hard, if you go fly off the handle, it's not going to be the end of the world. And I had a therapist who told me once, you know what, you lost your baby. You deserve to do and say whatever you need to do to feel better. And she told me, she gave me permission. She said, if you want to run down the street naked, screaming, you're allowed to do that because this happened to you. And it was so liberating because I'm like, wait a minute. You mean I can just say whatever I want? I can just do whatever I want? And the reality is yes, I am giving you permission. You can apologize later. But you got to get it out. And you got to get it out. So go ahead. Don't do anything super destructive, please. But again, you're allowed to say how you feel. You're allowed to share that what people are telling you is not helpful. To be able to tell people, well, what you said just right now, not helpful, actually very hurtful. Like, it's okay to do that. So I'm giving you permission. And I'll take the fallout for it later. And there's so many other phrases that we could go through. And the reality is that, these things, they don't help. They don't make you feel better. For me, a lot of times they make you feel worse. And you're kind of like, well, if you had just shut your mouth and not said anything, then I wouldn't be so mad at you. Because a lot of times these are the people that are really close to you, the people that you love, the people that you expect to show up in a good way for you. And here's the thing is that one of the things that was hardest for me, and honestly, I still kind of struggle with it, is that I have high expectations of people. And I expect people to be empathetic, to be compassionate, to not be sympathetic of my situation, whatever I happen to be in. Because I put those expectations on myself because I consider myself to be highly empathetic and compassionate. And so when I was grieving in the early days, I expected people to show up for me in the way that I needed. And these are the people that are oftentimes like your family, the people closest to you. Maybe it's a dear friend of yours, your best girlfriend or your best guy friend, or, your parents or your siblings. And then they don't know how to show up for you. And they don't, or they show up in the wrong way. And you're like, God, just stop talking. Please, just stop talking. Please go away. Please leave me alone. And sometimes, let's just take a moment that there's always, when I talk with people who are grieving children, there's always a mother-in-law who comes in and tries to be helpful and do all these things. And, and it's people that you have to kind of tolerate. And it's like, why should you have to be tolerating people when you're going through, one of the hardest times of your life, right? When you're as emotionally stressed, emotionally challenged, and now you have to tolerate the people around you who theoretically should be supporting you and should be helping you, but don't know how. And so here's the thing, I want to talk about, well, why? First of all, it's because when they say the wrong things, they are well-intentioned and they do care about you, and you have to try to remember that. And I know how hard that is. I really, really, really do. But the thing is that sitting in somebody else's pain is difficult. And like I said, empathy requires courage. And most people don't know how to do it. Most people are scared to do it, or just don't know how. And so they do want to help you. When they say things, it's because they do want to help. They would love to fix your problem. And people come at it as if grief is a problem that you have that needs to be fixed. That isn't the case, of course. Grief is not a problem that you have. Grief is something that happens to you that you need to process, you need to deal with, you need to heal from. Grief is the result of love, so keep that in mind. But they do care, and they want to show that they care, but they just don't know how. Again, going back to empathy, they need to have the ability to see things from your perspective. They need to try to not be judgmental, and sometimes that can be difficult. And they don't know that what you really need is just someone to feel with you, that you need to feel understood, that you need to feel heard. And you really just need to know that someone cares. And, the simplest thing that they could say would be like, I don't know what to say, but I really, like, I'm sorry, but I'm glad that you're sharing this with me, and I'm here for you. So what can you do, right? So here's the thing and again, all of these videos are really designed to help you, the person who's grieving. So what can you do? There's a few things. You will very quickly learn who the people are who are supportive, who get it, who understand what empathy is and can be empathetic. And you'll quickly understand who those people aren't. You don't have to tolerate people who are not empathetic right now. Let me tell you that again. You do not have to tolerate the people who are not empathetic, who say the wrong things, who try to fix you, who try to like make everything better and say, well, just be this way, just forget about it, just move on. Aren't you done grieving yet? All of those kind of things. So you can create a boundary there. You can tell people that you need space. You can spend proportionately more time with the people who do get you, who do understand what's going on, and less time with the people who don't. So don't just sit there. Don't just tolerate it. Tell people that you need time alone. Tell people that you need space. And provide feedback. So that's the next one. So you can create boundary, and then you can tell people like, okay, what you just said really wasn't helpful, right? And you can say, I don't want to get into a discussion about it right now because I'm really hurting, but what you're saying is not making it better. So please stop talking. And you can use whatever words you want to use, but it is absolutely okay to give people feedback. So you create boundaries of who you're going to have in your life, who you're not going to have in your life. Do not go to events and force yourself to suffer through an event that you don't want to be at. So say, do I want to do this today? Is this good for me? If it's not, don't do it. And you can tell people, I'm not ready for this. I need time. I need space. Please understand that I'm not in the mood to go to a big gathering like a wedding right now because I just lost my spouse. But I would love to spend one-on-one time with you. Can we do something separate later, to celebrate? And you can tell me all about, how things went. But I'm not going to put myself in that position because it's not good for me right now. And the one thing that I haven't talked about, that I think it would be wrong not to mention is because there are people who show up and they try to say something and it ends badly. And it's not the things that are helpful. But I was surprised to find the number of people who didn't say anything and they just avoided. And avoidance is so hard, because, and literally like this just happened for me. I had somebody who said, and again, this isn't somebody that I knew really well. This is more an acquaintance. And he said to me, well, I just assumed that you needed space, because I told him what happened. And yes, I needed space. But the other thing is that when we hurt, we do need to know that people care. And so avoidance can make it worse because we're like, well, where are these people? Again, we have expectations and we expect people to show up for us. And when all of a sudden the people that we think are going to show up, they give like dead radio silence, dead, like no silence. I mean, all silence, no, nothing. They don't send a text, they don't send a card, they don't send flowers, like nothing. And you're like, where is this person? And that can be hurtful. And again, those are the people that, as you grieve and as you heal, those are the people that, they just don't know. And you got to give them the out and say, well, they didn't know. And you can choose to keep those people in your life, and you can tell them like, hey, you didn't show up for me and it was really hurtful and I kind of expected that you would. But I forgive you, kind of thing. You can have those conversations if you want. I have some people that just dropped out of my life because they didn't get it. And I felt like they didn't get me. And the connection that we had was clearly not as strong as I thought. So my circle has gotten smaller as I've grieved. But here's the thing is, again, with all of this, the goal is to take care of you. The goal is to give yourself the support that you need and find that support, whatever that is. So if it's being alone and not going to events or not being around a lot of people because that's what you need right now, do that. If it's you need to be with other people and you don't want to be alone, because oftentimes that happens, find people that are supportive and ask for what you want. And say, I really need this right now. I'm feeling really lonely. I don't want to be in this house by myself. Can we go do this? Can we go out to dinner? Can we go out to lunch? Can we go to a movie? Can we do whatever? Can we go for a walk? Ask for what you need. So many people who are grieving do not ask. Do not ask for, ask for what you need. Create the boundaries that you need. Give feedback. Like, it's okay to give feedback. And the goal always is to take care of you. To remember that you're grieving, to not minimize it. This is a big deal, that you are going to get through it and you're going to be okay. But these things do take time, and there is going to be work, and there's so much more that I can share with you now. If you need support in the grief process, more than what I'm giving you here, reach out to me and we will find a way to help you. Because that's what I do. And that's what's important, because I want people like you to know that we are in this together, that you are not alone, that you can get through this, and grief will grow you. And there are things that we can learn, and we can honor the people that we love, the people that we've lost, by the way we choose to live now and moving forward into the future. So I love all you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think. Drop your comments. Let me know what you need, and we'll keep doing this, and we're in this together. Let's just walk through grief together.